When Jesus died on the cross for us, he did it to save the world, right? Not just our little one corner, but the entire world. And then he gave us, in Matthew 28, the Great Commission. I'm going to be telling you a little bit about what you're seeing. So what's on this first slide, of course, is me in the hat and the red shirt, and then Lonnie is to my left. And where we went to in Kenya is we went to the city of Nairobi, we went to Kisumu, and we also went to the village of Awendo. And we passed through multiple villages as we did that. We flew on January 20th. We flew from Portland, PDX, and we went, it was a straight flight to Amsterdam, long flight. And then we went from Amsterdam to Nairobi, another long flight, about 9 hours. And we landed in Nairobi. And we had two main reasons for this trip. One was there was a small school in Nairobi that we were going to visit. It happened to be in the slums of Nairobi. Nairobi, they tell me, I didn't look up the facts, has over 10 million people. That's a lot of people. And I'll tell you, you see cars, you see motorcycles, you see goats, you see people, and all of that is competing for a space of a road. So it was really, really eye-opening to see so much hustle bustle going on. But this is what we call a missional trip. And the difference between a missional trip and a mission is you're taking the gifts that God has given you to spread the word of the gospel. And you're going on a mission, which means you're traveling outside of your normal environment to make that happen. And so that's why you see that terminology there. We tried to capture as we were traveling. We traveled by plane. Once we got into the country of Kenya, we traveled by plane from Nairobi to Kisumu. And then we picked up a car in Kisumu and drove from Kisumu to Awendo, the village of Awendo. So it was very, very, Pastor Merrill of the Adventist Church, when I told him I was going, and he and Denny covered services on 2 Sundays that I was gone, he told me my life would be changed forever, and it really was. My life definitely has been impacted and changed from the most rewarding experience I've ever had. And I've traveled a lot. I've traveled to a lot of different European countries, but this was the first time I traveled in a missional capacity. So one of the things that we did there, and you'll see from this slide, it's interesting because you know how the Lord tells you to always be prepared? So about a week before I left, this gentleman on this slide here, as you can see, he's announcing an interdenominational conference, and guess who the host was? Moi. So he told me about a week before that he had could I send him pictures? Because he had billed me for an all-day conference. And I said, so what is it we're going to be talking about? And what is it you'd like me to present? He says, anything the Holy Spirit leads you to do. I thought, you're kidding, right? You want me to do an entire day on what the Holy Spirit tells you to do. So I started praying at that point, because I didn't have a clue. But for some reason, I had been talking to them about their conferences, and they kept telling me about God and their the challenges of them as leaders and pastors, and many say they're apostles, and that's between them and God. They may be. If they say they're an apostle, I'm not going to say you're not. But anyway, they were apostles and pastors, and those were the 2 most common terms. And I think a couple might have said they were elders. Anyway, so what came to me as I prayed on it, and they talked about the challenges of being a pastor in remote areas, it came to me, I heard a lot that sounded like they were trying to run through the problems to make sure that they were right with God and that they were saved. And I never heard the word grace. So I thought, as it came to me, to do this on grace. So the theme of the conference was God's grace and by grace alone. And I realized, since it might be new verbiage, that it might be important that several things. Remember I told you how relational and how important I believe relationships are, because God believes relationships are important. So what I asked them to do is, let's all introduce ourselves. And there was between maybe 70 to 100 different interdenominations, people with all different walks of faith, all different theology that were in the room. And so when we did this conference, we went with introductions, which took quite a while because every single person introduced themselves. It was interesting. And then we went to breakouts so we could process what they had just learned. I was astonished because nobody needed prompting to share what they got, what grace meant to them. And I explained to them, too, that by grace, the reason God says it's grace alone is because the Lord doesn't want anybody pumping up their chest thinking they did it on their own, because you didn't. You're not, and what is it that you didn't do on your own? You didn't give yourself salvation, and you can't earn salvation. So we talked about those things. We also brought to them, later in the day, a workshop that Lonnie ran on compassionate communication. And that brought up a lot of discussion, because most of us really want to blame someone for our problems. And that's normal. That's just a normal reaction, because people may have hurt you, and that hurt is real. But how do you communicate that you're hurt without blame? So we taught them some skills, and people loved it. It really, they felt like they had learned a lot. And for that, I thanked God, because it wasn't about me. It was about what the Lord brought to them that day. And then at the end, we did what I call a prayer chair. So we asked that anyone that needed prayer for their ministry to come and sit in the chair, and we would pray over them. Very inspiring and very empowering. And they loved it. So what you're seeing here is just some of those activities going on as we were kind of walking and working the room. So that was the second day that we were there. And then we went on the next day. What you're seeing here is the slum school. And the slum school was actually called the Victory School. But it was in a slum area, and I'll have to be honest with you, it was very heartbreaking, because the space was very tiny, very, very tiny. And the kids were happy, but there was really no place to play. And some of our colleagues from Nairobi were pretty angry, because they didn't think that it was a school that may have been sanctioned or not, because the Kenyan government takes school very, very, very seriously, as you're going to see the school that's motivated by love, King's Academy. Very different, very, very different. But everybody has their passion. One thing about these, and you're seeing the kids lining up there, they're adorable, and they were excited. You're going to see them singing a little song that they had taught them in English. And this little guy, Lonnie took that picture in his little pink shirt, and he was standing there looking at her like, "Who are you? And what are you doing here?" Because she had a big bag of stuffed animals on her back. I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we get to it. Oh yeah, this is the students at Victory School, and they're going to be in Nairobi. So you'll hear them singing a little song about Jesus. And it's just...
Come to Jesus, our Redeemer. Come to Jesus, our Redeemer. There is a fountain for you. There is a fountain for you. There is a fountain for you and for me. There is a Savior to be. There is a Savior to be. There is a Savior to be for the world.
Yeah, isn't that great? That was really cute. And And they were so proud of us.
Deep and wide, there is a fountain for you and for me. Deep and wide, there is a fountain for you and for me. Deep and wide, there is a fountain for you and for me. Deep and wide, there is a fountain for you and for me. Deep and wide, there is a fountain for you and for me. Deep and wide. Let the Holy Spirit come and take control in every situation that I have on my mind. Father, Father, Father. Spirit, Spirit, Spirit. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
Isn't that beautiful? It is. It just, and to be there just warms your heart. I mean, just, these kids work so long on this. Now, this is them lining up for lunch. And
they've made
it became real apparent to our hosts that we didn't know what portion sizes were. Because look at these little guys. Some of them are 3 years old. So as I was scooping it up, I was putting like maybe a cup in their little bowls. And they kind of fired me real quick and put 2 cups in those bowls. And the children loved it, and they ate it. And at one point they ran out of bowls, and so we'd have to wait and wash them when some of them finished. But you'll see another custom in Kenya that I love. Matter of fact, I do it almost every day now. You know, we wash our hands before we eat everything we do. But they really purposely wash your hands. So you wash your hands in nice, this most amazingly warm water, and soap, and you rinse them and you kind of dry them off, just kind of air dry them off. And then when you're done eating, because many people eat with their fingers. You know, I eat with my fingers. That was actually the best part. Matter of fact, I think Lonnie made a comment that she never got to eat with her fingers when she was growing up, so she felt real rebellious and happy that she got to eat with her fingers. And then when you're done eating, you wash your hands again. So very, very, a great hygienical thing for us to do. So, and you're seeing where I got fired and they're having me hand the bowls to the kids, which is fine. I realized real quick I wasn't very good at that. So yeah. So that's what you're seeing there, is the kids are eating and having lunch. Now keep in mind that this is, and what they're eating is beans and rice. That's what they're eating, which is a complete protein. It's a great thing to eat.
That's why we washed our hands. Right. So we can eat with our hands. We washed our hands. We're all clean, healthy. For you? For you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The portion sizes, as we can see in America, are very big compared to our portion sizes.
And Lonnie's commenting on the portion sizes because they're little. The average age here was probably about 3 to 4. They were in that, and they had older children there. The older children, it was awesome to watch them taking care of the younger ones. Those were kind of like your 5th and 6th graders. Not very many of them. There was more like only about 4, I think, of the older kids, which is common because one of the things that's a challenge in a lot of different countries is the younger children, the older children, when you get around, it's kind of like in our country, when you get a certain age, it's hard to keep kids going to school, right? And so in this particular area, now in the village, it's very different, and you'll see that. Now what you're seeing here, this is Grace Communion International's facility. So we have a congregation in Nairobi, and this is their building in Nairobi, and they're very proud of it. It's only a couple of years old. They built it themselves and actually had been in a tent prior to building this. So they're very, very proud of it. I don't know if you noticed the sign. The sign says church services are from, is it like 10 to 2? 11 to 2. 11 to 2. And we have a hard time doing 10:30 to 11:30. But I can tell you another story. When we got to the Village of a Window, there was a conference going on that started, well, I think it started at 9. They kind of let us sleep in, so we got there at 10. From 10 a.m. till 2 a.m. the next morning. Yeah, now that's church. That's church. But the laughter, the singing, the dancing was phenomenal. This is GCI's church again, just another angle of it. This they wanted me to take a shot of because they had worked really hard to get plumbing on this property. First they brought the property, then they saved and saved and saved and saved until they had the money to build the structure. Well, they built the structure before they could replace the latrine, the outhouse. And so this is the outhouse they wanted me to take, but this is their actual restrooms now. And they're very, very proud of them, as they should be, because it was not an easy task to get water and plumbing to that area. So that's their wash facility now. This is just the inside. I was really fascinated because the chairs color coordinated. Isn't that beautiful? They were royal blue and that really pretty canary yellow. And that's what they used for services, and they were gorgeous. And that's just me at the podium. They wanted me to grab a picture of that, so I did. Now this one on your left, his name is Pastor Anthony. He is the GCI, Grace Communion International's Eastern Region pastor. So he is over all of the pastors for Uganda, Ethiopia, there's like the Congo, and Kenya. So there's 4 or 5 different countries that he represents. So he works hard. Standing beside him is his wife, Jane, and then I'm in the middle, and then on my left, okay. That is his brother. And it's interesting, like my mom is here, my sister, brother-in-law, my surrogate sister, my surrogate brother. That's how you plan a church, right? The church has about 30 of his family members. And it's really cool. So this is one of his brothers that's standing there. And then this one, now by now we've left Nairobi, and we're just driving down the countryside on our way to a window. So this was just one of the marketplaces. This was, they actually are selling some of those wares. So it's just kind of a combination of selling different wares and just how it's laid out. It was interesting because a lot of this, and this is another part of an open market. And this little guy was really interesting because what he was doing, they sell things. I think he's selling bananas. I bought about 6 pineapple that, oh my goodness, were the best pineapple I ever ate in my life from a street vendor like him. And what they do is, like, we have our streets out here that are divided. And so you have traffic on both sides, right? And the same thing, except they drive like the British drive, and like many other countries except America, on what we call the opposite side of the street. But that's not the point. The point was, what they do is they stand there, and then people, as they come by, slow down and purchase. So they sell a lot that way, and there's a lot of beautiful farmland and countrysides, and you're going to see some more of that. This was a street market, kind of like our farmers markets is what this is, what they're doing. And I actually wore it yesterday. I should have wore it today. I bought a handmade beaded necklace that is actually a necklace and a shawl. And most people thought it was a part of the dress, but it wasn't. And I should have wore it today, but I worn it yesterday, and sometimes you forget. But I promise to wear it so you can see it. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the bag that I'm carrying, I'll share that story with you too. The host daughter and his wife bought that for me, and it's beautiful. It's made out of beads and wood, little wooden slats, and I just love it. And Lonnie has one too of different colors, but it's one of my favorite bags. More of the countryside as we're driving through. Just like one of the reasons that even like in Haiti and a lot of different countries, it's so devastating when those those cyclones and typhoons and things come through, because a lot of the structures are made out of metal. And so there's not much there. You know, it was interesting when I was in Tokyo I worked for NEC Electronics, and I was on the probably 35th floor. Japan is a little tiny island. So they have no place to go but up. And so when they build these buildings, they build mega skyscrapers from my perspective, but they also build them earthquake-proof. So what happens is the building is designed to sway. So every so often you get these little mini tremors, and literally the building is swaying. It's a really unsettling position to be in, especially if you're in the elevator. And I experienced that a lot. But when I saw these homes made out of metal, I realized how vulnerable people are in homes like this. Now, don't think all of their homes look like this. They don't. We stayed in what they call a compound. Reason it's a compound, it's totally fenced in. But it's fenced in with, trust me, fencing that is not, it's brick. And it's probably about 7 feet tall. So you can't really see over it, and the doors lock. But the compound that we stayed in happened to be an Airbnb. I mean, most of us are familiar with Airbnbs, right? They are temporary housing, and it's great because you have a stove to cook on, you have a host that helps you, but this particular house was probably about 6,000 to 7,000 square feet, made with some of the most amazing, most beautiful artwork and etching in the wood I had ever seen, and every single bedroom had a bathroom in it. So, you know, you go from that to seeing that. And so their hotels are absolutely gorgeous, and they're smart enough to use solar heating, which we should learn from, because the building we were in, our hosts had a friend that owned it. So when we were there in the hotel, I couldn't figure out why I couldn't control the hot water. And at first, I almost got scalded. And they said because that's how hot the water is. And they were in the process of installing a temperature controller to bring that down. So you actually got cold water. So it was very, very, very interesting. This little guy was dancing on the street. Remember that Michael Jackson moonwalk? That's what he was doing. And it was so cute, and that we just snuck a picture of him. But that's what that picture came from. These are, oh my goodness, I have to share this part. So when I was a little girl, and my sisters can attest to this, the older ones, I think you two aren't old enough. But anyway, my father loved Kenya, not just Africa. He loved the country of Kenya. I don't know why. Don't understand it, but he did. And so he taught us a lot about Kenya. And he always said that his dream before he died was to go to Kenya. And so when Lonnie and I found out we were going to Kenya, she told my mom that she was taking Daddy with her, and she was taking him in her heart. And my mom thought we were nuts, but she laughed and humored us. But later she said she got it. But when we got there, the reason this picture stood out to us is we traveled to East Texas to my grandparents' homes once or twice a year, at least once a year when we were a little older. And when both of us got here, we felt like we had came home. We felt a sense of home, the smell of the earth, the foliage, the cows, the animals. It was so beautiful that we just it was hard to fight the tears back and we knew that our Father was in heaven and he was smiling down on us. The picture you see here, you probably can't, we were so far away from it, I don't think you can, I could actually see the gold. They were excavating gold. God has blessed the continent of Africa with some of the greatest minerals the world will ever see. From gold to diamonds to a fertilized land that grows sugarcane, it grows rice, it grows bananas, it grows potatoes, it grows in abundance, anything you can imagine almost. And when I thought about that, I thought, my, what a wealth that God has given them. There is just so much there, and you see it. That red clay, we were shocked at how much of the natural produce that was grown in Kenya is grown in East Texas. Now, I didn't see any cotton, but I saw sugarcane. Now, they don't grow rice in East Texas either, but I bet it would grow there. They grow greens, they grow potatoes, they grow, like I said, bananas, and tea and coffee. Wealth of prosperity from those standpoints. And like I said, gold as well, So this is now, I believe this, and correct me, my brothers and sisters, if this is not a crane, but I think it's a crane. Anybody know? Stork? Think it's a stork? Anyway, stork or a crane. But this is at Lake Victoria. Oh, you're going to see some beautiful sights of Lake Victoria. These are all things we saw at Lake Victoria. Once we got to a window, our host had his son take us. We were supposed to be going to a safari. And Lonnie was coordinating the safari, okay? Now, there's a little point about a safari. You have to get up early in the morning. Everybody knows Lonnie, right? Think she got up early in the morning? The only person up early that morning was me and another colleague as we waited for her and her little partner, and I'll say Christ, but it might have been crime. Anyway, to get ready to go. And you just couldn't. So in other words, we were too late for the safari, because if you go on a safari, the animals are out of there. They're hiding. They're out of the heat. They're not stupid. Only the people are looking for animals afternoon. It's not happening. So we decided to go on a detour to Lake Victoria, which none of us were disappointed by. So the gentleman you're seeing there is our host's son. His name is Lonnie as well. So, I have a sister, Lonnie. Some of us in our family setting call her Renee, because I have a brother whose name is Lonnie, and my father's name is Lonnie. And this child or sister of mine seems to collect Lonnies. Her stepson's name is Lonnie. So we teased her about collecting Lonnies. But what's interesting is this Lonnie actually looks identical to her son, Lonnie. And so everyone teased her about that, because she pulled out pictures on her cell phone to show him how much he looked like her son. And he was like, "Are you sure you didn't know my father in another life?" So it was really cute. So that's just why we have this picture here. She wants it etched in time that she has a Kenyan son named Lonnie. And this again is Lake Victoria. You just couldn't take too many pictures. It was just absolutely beautiful. more pictures of Lake Victoria. They're harvesting some I think at Lake Victoria, it's mostly like, tilapia, I think someone told me, is in Lake Victoria. More shots of Lake Victoria. It's just absolutely, it's hard to visualize it. It's so massive and so beautiful. And that's me and Lonnie on the shores, and that's just on the bank. We're taking more pictures. And if I could have taken you all there with me, I definitely would have. It's just so pretty. That structure there used to be an actual, it's like on the jetty. And so they used to have a lot of the fishermen would go out early in the morning and they would sell their wares there, or their harvest there in this structure. Now we're coming into more sights of the countryside of a window. And like I said, it's gorgeous. It's luscious. It's rolling fields of some of the most beautiful scenery you've ever seen. And we were constantly in awe of how pretty it was and how at home you feel. Like I said, this red dirt, very common. If you want to see it, there are lots of areas in the U.S. that you can see it, but East Texas is prominent for it. And it has the same smell. And I think that was such a coming home feeling that we got. You know, most African Americans, we come from Africa. So when you hear of being in the motherland, that's where we come from. We should embrace that with so much love and pride. God created us different, and all of us bring a uniqueness to that. Talk about beauty. Go to all nations, them to come to us, and us to go to them. And the worst thing we want to do when we get there is be that ugly American that's looking for the same thing that you came from. That can't be any sillier. Oh my goodness, I wish I could bring church to you guys. True church. Now we're doing church. I'm not trying to say, remember, you know, they have church and we have church, right? This gentleman had 2 sons that I've never seen such dancing. And they literally came and got me out of the crowd and pulled me up on the stage to dance with them. My dancing was pathetic. It really was. And I think I'm a pretty good dancer. But it was pathetic to these 7 and 8-year-old. But when you saw their dad, you knew where they got it from. But what was so exciting is the dancing just brought you into the celebration of the Lord, and you couldn't sit still. You couldn't even sit in your seats. You know, you kind of sit. You had to get up, and you had to dance. And that was on the 2 a.m. church. You know? So it was great. There was lots of dancing. There was lots of singing. There was lots of sermons by multiple preachers, teachers. What I found interesting is people respond to where God has put them. We all respond to a more quieter, toned down service because that's what we're used to. Their spirits respond to an uplifting service, a service that just grabs you. And we find that across the world because everyone will respond differently. And God does that by design because we're all different. What was exciting about the service is that even though it went until 2 in the morning, I saw about 40 or 50 people give their life to Christ, that were baptized and giving their life and dedicating their life to Christ that day. So talk about an altar call. It was amazing. So we have a whole nother 40, 50 people in the body because of those celebrations that they were giving. Oh, now we're at the school. We're at the Motivated by Love King's Academy in a window. You're seeing their teacher. One of their teachers is on my left there. This is the students, and you can see they're listening intently. because as we were talking, their teacher was translating for them. Some of them speak English, some not so much. And the school, the structure you're seeing, the building, see all the light and windows. The gentleman that started this school is born and raised in a window. Now, he has traveled all over the world, essentially, all over the country, all over his country. He was a part of his government, worked in the government for many, many years, and decided to retire fairly young. I'd say he's probably in his early, maybe late 50s, if that. But he decided to retire, and his purpose for retiring was so that he could educate the children. So he's a pastor. He cried out to God about it. He committed 75% of his income. He became pretty wealthy. And a lot of what he did, so now he's built that church we saw. He built the school. The school has children from the age of 3, because it has a preschool. It has a pre-kindergarten and goes up to 8th grade. They didn't have any 8th graders yet because the school has only been in existence for about 3 years. So no 8th graders yet, but they do have a fairly good-sized 7th grade class. So you're seeing the kids there. This is Lonnie, and I wanted to give a shout out to our sister Cindy Johnson. So we made bags to take to the older children, the 7th, 6th, and 5th graders. And we knew we couldn't make them for all of the kids, and we made them for the 4 that we had in Nairobi, the bags, and you'll see those. But the 345 pencil bags she made with straps. And you're seeing Lonnie trying to tell the kids, look what we brought you, because why we needed so many, the number of kids that were going to come for our visit kept growing, because when the parents in a window found out the school had the Americans coming, they wanted their kids to be there that day. But they believe that a lot of children will get signed up for the school because of this. So Lonnie's trying to get them to understand what to do with this pencil bag, and it wasn't until she put it on her wrist and started swinging it like this, the kids laughed so hard and everybody rushed her. They wanted one. The next day we saw kids walking and swinging their little purses. It was bags. It was cute. Even the boys got into it because we had them of different colors. Oh, this is their teacher again. I love that backpack. Isn't that great? Just shows you who he is, right? He's amazing. And his little girl goes to the school as well. But a great guy, just a really good guy. These are the bags that we made being distributed. And I have to tell you a story about the bags we made. We were given the task of can you bring something with you to help the kids when you come? So I went through this extensive list that she sent me, and I saw book bags. Well, I knew we couldn't bring, like backpacks, but I thought, wouldn't it be cool if something was made by hand and we made it? So our sewing group took on making those bags, and it was Trish and Sharon Jameson, Leona, myself, and Cindy Johnson. It took us 3 or 4 months, and we gave up our Saturdays for about 6 hours once a month, and we sewed and pinned and made. And I'll tell you, at the first Saturday, I was cutting a lot, cutting out the material, the bags, and I got home and I thought, I don't think I have a muscle that's not hurting from leaning over that board. And as I talked to the other ladies, they were like, were you sore? Yeah, were you sore? Because we were using muscles we hadn't used. So talk about a labor of love. That's what it was, and they so appreciated it. So it was worth giving up our Saturdays. This little guy I think Lonnie had about 200, maybe a little bit more, it might have been in the 300s, of these kids from the ages of 3 to 5, 3 to 5, 3 to 4. There were some 5-year-olds, but most of them were 3. And he got exhausted, so I had to take his picture, waiting for the stuffed animals. And the stuffed animals are really something. She's trying to keep all these 3 to 5-year-olds' attention and get them to settle down so she can set up all these stuffed animals. Well, we had set up a lot of them ahead of time. So if you can see the picture, had been looking, and every time they'd scoot their chairs, you get a row of them, they'd scoot their chairs, and they get right up front, right by the stage. And then, of course, Lonnie would look at them and sit their chair down and plop down. They're kids, right? But I have to tell you, the adults wanted them stuffed animals, too. One gentleman came up to me, and he says, look, I'm an old man. Can I have a stuffed animal? I said, no, because I don't want a child not to get one. We gave you one later, but so let me tell you the story about the stuffed animals. So Lonnie is affiliated with Multnomah County, and for years she was in the gang task force. And so the Winterhawks, the Portland Winterhawks, professional hockey team, they do what's called a teddy bear toss. So the very first game of the season, if you bring a teddy bear, you don't have to pay to go to the game. But when the first Winterhawk goal is scored, you have to throw your teddy bear onto the ice. And those teddy bears are collected and given to charity. I want to tell you, I don't know who brought it, but somebody brought a 6-foot stuffed giraffe. And I told Lonnie, that giraffe is not going to Kenya. And it didn't either. We found another program to give the giraffe to. But the thing was, when Lonnie told me, and we found out we needed over 200 of these, I thought, there's no way. How are we going to ship 200 teddy bears to Kenya? Well, as we talked more with our colleagues on the Kenyan side, they were like, oh, no, don't ship them. You'll never see them again. You're going to have to bring them with you. So I'm like, I don't know what you're doing, but we're not going to Africa with these teddy bears. And Lonnie kept saying, yes, we are. I said, no, we're not. She says, Pastor, we are going to Kenya with the teddy bears. I thought, now she's putting it in that faith place, right? So she was pulling the faith card, and so I had to concede, fine. And then I told her, you're getting them there? I'm not having nothing to do with it. Now, do you think that worked? No, it didn't work. So what we did is we analyzed it. We started a GoFundMe page, which helped. And so what we ended up doing is vacuum wrapping in these great big bags we got from Amazon, and we stuffed as many teddy bears as we could get and stuffed animals, and we sucked all the air out of them. That worked great because we were able to get 4 to 5 packages of stuffed animals into one box. Well, we ended up going with 3 boxes, 4 feet by 4 foot cubes. So now we show up at the airport with these 4 foot by 4 foot cubes, boxes like this, and we had already made pre-arrangements with Delta Airlines that they weren't going to charge us. They were just going to put them on the plane. So we get them on the plane, and we're at the airport, and I talked Lonnie, never early in her life, but I talked her into us being there 3 hours early. Well, it was a good thing we did, because we fought with them on getting those animals on the plane for an hour. So they finally conceded and checked all their records, and yes, we could ship them, so we get them there. Well, we get to Nairobi, and my friend, who was coming from Chicago with all kinds of supplies, was supposed to get there 2 hours before me. She was still tied up in customs with the stuff she had. With the teddy bears, they let them go through, and we get to a window, and here this big boxes of teddy bears are sitting in our hostess foyer. So it was pretty exciting to see that the Lord had brought the teddy bears, but this is Lonnie with all the teddy bears. But what was so exciting was the children. I've never seen so much joy. And we finally get all the teddy bears given out. This is us. I think my friend had brought about 190 Tom shoes. If you know the company Tom, they're real big on giving back, and multiple sizes. But what I learned real quick, you're only going to get the 2 small ones off their feet. You get a large size on their feet, you're not getting it back. They were not giving up that shoe. So I had to try to be real selective and get them on right in the first place, but that was a pretty exciting part too. But I have to share with you, so the next day, as we're driving back to the school, now we're meeting with all the teachers. We had our massive giveaway. This is the guy sitting in the center holding the teddy bear is our host. He's the one I was telling you about that actually built the church and built the school. And this is actually the church, inside the church, with all the teddy bears are in chairs. And we took the kids one by one and let them pick. And it was really exciting to see how they picked the teddy bear that they loved. So that was really exciting. So the teddy bears, what we saw the next day with the teddy bears is that we saw kids sitting in their front yards, cuddling their teddy bears. The day that we were leaving school, you saw brothers and protecting their brothers and sisters from older children taking their teddy bears. No one was giving up those teddy bears, but it was so exciting to see them holding them, to see them in their backpacks, to see them come to school with so much joy in their Tom shoes. Some of them looked like they'd had them. For 2 years, they'd had them for one night because those shoes are not designed for the dust and the sand, but it was still an awesome joy to see them having them. The other thing that we saw, this is one of the little girls with her teddy bear. One thing was interesting. The little girls, hair is a problem. You got to wash it, you got to primp it. So having the hair cut very short is very common. But they're adorable. They're absolutely adorable. I think Lonnie was trying to steal people's children. She wants the teddy bears. She's trying to steal people's children. Those are the bag distribution. And Love at the Cross put on the bags. A lot of you contributed to that because we just didn't have the funds in our church. At the time, it was a little expensive. All of us paid our own money to get to Africa, and a lot of love and labor went into making the bags. And then the ladies did not want to ship them without our name stamped on it. And as you can see, it brought a whole different element to the bag as well, for them as well as for us. This was a class, and to show how God made sure every single child, over 300, got something. And those T-shirts were given from a school in Chicago. And the kids loved them, and it was our 4th graders. Remember I said we gave the book bags with Love at the Cross on it to our 7th, 6th, and 5th graders. And then Lonnie had given teddy bears to her preschoolers and kindergartners. We had given more pencil bags to the other classes. And we had pencil bags, but these 4th graders were just old enough to want something bigger than that, right? And they didn't get teddy bears. And so we looked, and all of a sudden we remembered we had all of these T-shirts, and we didn't have enough to give all of the kids. So we gave them to the 4th graders. And talk about pride and appreciation. So we're showing them wearing their T-shirts the next day. They wore them to school, and you see them kind of grouped on the end there. And so the teacher said, when you come again, can everybody have a T-shirt? And I thought, so what you're seeing here is all of the kids. It's hard to capture them in one picture, but they're all in the schoolyard. They're thanking us for what they had gotten. And so very, very rewarding. I know I tried to not take up too much time, but it's one of those things that is so huge. How do you share it and so that you can feel like you were there as well? So I hope you felt that. God tells us to go out into the world, and he tells us and so I'm just going to go through this scripture really quickly. I'm just going to read it to you. This is Matthew 28, verses 16 through 20. So verse 16, then the 11 disciples left for Galilee, going to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. Remember what Jesus told them through Mary? Verse 17, when they saw him, they worshiped him, but some of them doubted. Verses 18, Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. All authority. Jesus was given all authority. Why do we as believers carry any fear in our hearts? Why would we do that? Why would we be scared when the Lord Jesus that we know has been given all authority in heaven and on earth? Right? No, my brothers and sisters, never let fear of anything bother you. Let's look at verse 19. Therefore, go and make disciples. This is the Great Commission. That's what we as Christians are told to do. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all commands I have given you. And be sure to this, I am with you always. Who's with you always? Jesus is with you always, even to the end of the ages. We have nothing to fear, nothing, absolutely nothing. We have a newness in life with Jesus Christ that will carry us through anything, right? You know, I love you all so much that this sermon is so dear to my heart that I'm almost sobbing because I want you to get it. And those of you, all of you that get it, embrace it. You're beautiful people. You're here because you get it. You're here because God brought you here. You're Christians because of this. That's how you go to all nations. Translate that wherever you go with everyone you meet. I love you all.